Welcome back to the fourth installment. Me and the ladies, Evie and Alaska, want to welcome you back to Tales with Tales, where I do a book review and my dogs harass me. It's going to be great. Today, we're doing Artemis by Andy Weir, possibly. Not too sure. It's pretty good. I enjoyed it. There's some parts I really didn't like, some parts I really did. So, yeah, let's talk about it. So how I got the book, I read his first novel, breakout novel, called The Martian, and it was incredible, absolutely amazing. Really loved it. The science behind it was fantastic. And whenever I heard he came out with this, I was really excited because it won one of the Goodyear Science Fiction Awards, and I was ultimately really excited. So the author was a couple decade long software engineer, and he really used that to kind of propel his authoring career. And so he wrote us his first breakout novel, The Martian. It went really well, and he was like, wow, now I can take a break from working normally and I can really just dive into being an author. And so he has a lot of scientific background whenever it comes to electronics, computers, things like that, and he is a huge space fan. He's dived into all of the NASA stuff, I guess you could say, and so he's incredibly knowledgeable, and he really shows it well in a lot of his novels, or at least the first two, because he's only had two. So it's about a girl named Jazz Bashara. She is on the first lunar colony, which is called Artemis, and she's kind of a delivery worker there because there's people that come and visit the colony, but there's people that have to live there to maintain it, and she's one of those people. She doesn't have the best life, doesn't have awesome living conditions, and so she's constantly looking for ways to get rich, and she comes upon an opportunity, and that's really where the crux of the story takes off. And so she gets kind of into trouble. She's really wild and reckless, too smart for her own good. She's rebellious by nature, and so she gets into trouble along the way, and it just kind of goes downhill from there for her. The premise of the book was fantastic. It had, a lunar colony, the first one. You can't really get much better than that for a space geek or a NASA geek to, see a lunar colony and people living on it, how it functions, how do they get their oxygen, how do they get their electricity, how do they fund it. So this was an awesome background, such a big scale thing, just really grand. But ultimately, I really feel like the author just kind of failed to deliver such an awesome story that could have been, and he kind of used something small scale, and he kind of misplaced all the science that he had from The Martian. It wasn't there, and so I was kind of disappointed after reading it. It was entertaining, but it just wasn't him. The storyline is ultimately, it's really a lot about politics and kind of investments opportunities from this lunar colony, and I understand that that's pretty realistic because it would really get into that kind of idea of things. But I really was looking for the science, and there was a little bit in there, but just not enough to make a difference, I think, over what Bashara was going through the book. And it just wasn't there for me. The storyline was okay, but it was kind of just a big get-rich-quick scheme, and there really wasn't a lot about the lunar colony itself that I was looking for. Hi, baby. It looks like it might be a calm day. Look at her. You see this? Anyway, characterization. This is really where I think that the author struggled. So, his first novel, The Martian, comes out with this botanist astronaut having to survive on Mars, and he does a great job because the guy handles it with humor, and it's really entertaining to watch because as smart as he is, he's that much as humorous, as funny. But here, I understand the second novel, he's really trying to do something different with his characters and trying to really branch out and explore kind of his author and literary motivations, things like that. But he really just went to the extremes on all the characters. For instance, Jazz Bashara's dad is incredibly overprotective. it just turned into a lot of cliches from all these characters. And ultimately, what I was kind of disappointed in is that Jaz Bashara herself is really independent, really rebel-minded, really, forward-thinking and everything, but she's ultimately really hypersexualized by the author here. Really, just a lot of inappropriate and nonsensical use of language and of characterization that didn't add anything to the story. And so there were just a lot of parts where she was talking about something, and it just didn't add anything. And I was like, why did you even put this in here? Are you hoping that, teenage boys look at this and laugh or something? And so it was kind of hypersexualized in that sense, and it didn't add anything from the story, and it didn't help out the story at all. So the style, again, I keep saying this, his first novel, it just wasn't there. The thing I loved from the first novel, the style wasn't there, the humor was misplaced, it was misleading. And so, I really am optimistic about him as a writer, because I know that the second novel can be really difficult because you're still branching out. But I understand also that good grief, that he tried to take new bounds here, and I think his best work is to come. I'm really excited. I'm going to keep it on the bookshelf, not necessarily because I loved it, but just because I think he will have amazing books in the future. He's got such an expansive mind, and I think he'll really tackle some really cool space ideas for novels. The length, again, it was kind of short, honestly, and it doesn't surprise me because the idea of a lunar colony is such a grand, big scale thing, and he just didn't capitalize on that huge idea. Just kind of used a small scale story. Wasn't a lot of important length in it, and it didn't really, he kind of just used a small story, and the setting kind of seemed out of place. It didn't seem that important to the story, and I wish he would have done more of that. So the length was pretty small, and it was a pretty quick read in general. So takeaways, I really do think his best is yet to come. I gave this a 3 stars. It wasn't great. It was entertaining, but it just wasn't there for me. I could have easily given it 2 stars, I think, but I want to be optimistic. I think, the best is yet to come. He's going to have some amazing books in the future, and I hope he does. I can't wait to read them. And so, I think there's lessons learned to be from this one, and so it'll be good. I'm really excited for what he comes out with. So, if you like the review or the pups, then subscribe to the channel. It's going to be fun. I have tons of reviews to go. Tell me what you're reading, comment, subscribe, let me know. This was Tales with Tales. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next review.